Wow. Welcome, everybody. It's weird. I just realized when you hit share screen, you can't see, it doesn't show start webinar. Alrighty. Let's see. Welcome, everybody, to today's Lunch and Learn. I'll be your host, Jared. If you have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat or in the Q&A. I'll be able to answer them to the best of my ability. While you're formulating up your question, a couple of things to talk about is we have our decisions training YouTube channel. We post videos pretty regularly on there. Most notably, Friday there'll be a new video pop up there, so you can definitely see any new videos that we've created on there. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Also, if there's any suggestions of videos you'd like to see on there, just email us at trainingatdecisions.com, and we will be able to assist you there with any content that you might be interested in. So those will be a couple things that we can do there to increase your decisions learning. The other thing that we have is we also have the marketplace.decisions.com, where we also have different kind of decisions apps that you can utilize for your projects, and also you can look at them to find out what they do, and also they can show you how to use certain parts of decisions for your particular use case. So some pretty cool stuff. Very fascinating. We have that there. We also have on decisions.com/events, we have new events coming up. And so feel free to look at any upcoming events that we have going on that part. Alrighty. With that being said, any comments or questions? Let's see, make sure I have the QA. All related cases. That sounds good, Wade. Let's see. All related cases. Is a folder name relevant? The benefit of parent folder ID, how to not send records to the repo, and how to assign a case. All right, I want to give you the ability to talk so we can dive in this further. Alrighty. Cases. I think I got what your question is. So
yeah, sorry, I know those are kind of very general. Yeah, I can expound on each of those.
Sure, yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, so the first one is folder name is required, and I was just like, I guess to our users, it's not going to be seen much, but is that relevant in some way that I need to make it? Because it could just be called test, and no one would probably ever see it most of the time, because whenever they're in their inbox, they probably don't see the folder name. Like, is there a, like, what are the reasons I would want to make, or maybe what's the general thing people name the folder?
Yeah. So essentially the reason why in case it is, let's just create one. This is a really good question. Case entity having fun. Having fun. And let's see, can I do a case? Yeah, sure. We'll make it a suitcase. Why not? A briefcase. That looks cool. Case stuff. So it's very important. There's this great document on our decisions website, on our doc site, and it's called, I think, the difference between the data structures. I'm going to tangent, but I'll come back. So the differences between the data structures document talks about how each data structure is different from each other, hence the name of the document. I'm going to put this in the chat right here. The reason why this is relevant to the question is because what this does is this tells us what type of data structure it is in regard to, does it have folder behavior. You'll notice right here all the way to the right, there is the case entity, or the second to the right, there is the case entity, and it is part of the entity framework, and it has folder behavior. This folder behavior means that each record you create, that let's say it's Jared's employment record, that is actually a folder that you can store stuff in. And so when it says, hey, what's the folder name? That's the name that lives inside of the decision system. All right, so now let's get back to the germane question. I'm going to create a case entity, and I will call this. First, let me just create a subfolder so we can store all that data. So we're going to say store data. And sure. So this is just going to be a data store where I store all of my case entity records. I do more move, and then let's put it up here so it's more in the root aspect. All right, cool. So now what I'm going to do is in my case entities having fun, let's create a database structure, or I'm sorry, case entity. And we're going to call this the employment case. And there's an email, there is a start date, right? There is a position, and there is, what is it, salary, let's say, right? And then there's like a department of some sort, right? All right, so this is a case. You can use a case entity for almost any type of business object that you have. So let's go ahead and create that. And boom, I have a case entity now created. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a couple of case entity records so you can see what they look like. So if I go ahead and I say, let's say create case stuff. So it's very important to remember the use case that I'm using this for. This is an employment record. So any record that's created will be a um, a record that's reflective of that. So if I go to my all steps or my project, my user defined types, my case entity, employment case, we go ahead and click the create step right here. And then what I'll do here is, right, I have a folder name and parent folder ID. So this actually will tie into your second question, which is the folder ID part. So I'm going to go ahead and build this data, and I'm going to create just some random stuff. So we'll say this is documentation. We'll say the email is Jared at gmail.co. And we'll say position. And we'll say this is, we'll say writer. That's what we'll say. And then salary, we'll say, I don't know. We'll just do random numbers. And the constant date, we'll say I started today. All right, so these are I want to say mail.co at mail.co. And so what these are the properties of my case, but the problem is, right? Let's say I set this up as test, right? And then my description, I'm gonna say this is, test description. I'm just putting just random data in it. Now, in order for me to actually store this, I will need to give it a parent folder ID. What the parent folder ID is just the property that says where do you want this stored. So it's where inside of the decision system do you want it stored. And so in order to store this, we have to select a previous folder. So in this case, you can set it up as dynamic, but I set it up as a constant. So I'm going to go ahead and pick up my stored data because that's the folder that I'm passing in. And now you can see the name there, or you can pass in another folder ID. All right, cool. So now let's say, what if I just name this test to your question? Is it relevant? Well, let's say I create this record here. Boom. So that I created that record. And then let's say I create another record, right? And we'll say writer position. I'm going to use Jasmine since she's here with us at mail.com. And we'll say I'll name hers test, and she is writer number 2, right? So writer 2. All right, cool. And so now I'm going to save and run this. Cool. So now I have case entity records. Now, if I go ahead and look at this, right? And I go ahead and look at this in the portal, you see that now I have test and test. So if I asked you, hey, which one's Jasmine's and which one's mine? If you didn't see me actually type it, one at a time, right? You would be like, I don't know, maybe it's 2, maybe it's 1, because I just named it test. The folder name is just the name that appears inside of the system, right? And so that's what makes it a little bit hard to find. From your perspective, let's say obviously no one would see this, right? Going to your question, no one would really see this because probably people see it this way. If I have a report and I set it over my case stuff, that's the employment case folder. And then what you can do is, let's see, I'm looking for my data. So sure, we have, I think I said email. Yep, email, department, position, right? Right. I presume people see the data like this way, right? Is this correct to say, Wade?
Yeah. And yeah,
Yeah.
in our case, it's we have different workflow types,
Hmm.
different 3-character codes. So that's the prefix we put on the case, and then it's a number.
I gotcha. So you have like
Yeah,
the case ID right here. You also have the case ID in your thing.
correct. Yeah.
Some of that. I see what you're saying. Yeah. So there's another great YouTube video. Let me share with you. It explains the concept of extension data inside of the system. Let's see, training. And it is extension data. And basically, what this helps explain is the concept of what you're utilizing with decisions in regard to case entities and folder extensions. When you see this catch-all term called extension data, essentially what decisions is doing is it's combining your properties. So for example, the properties of email, department, and position, and combining that with the decisions folder data table. So you'll see two tables. You create one table with your extension data, that's what we call it, and then we combine that and we join that with our folder table. And that's why when you're creating your view here of only showing your extension properties and only using the case ID prefix, you're only pulling from that extension data and you're just not using the folder name. But from a decisions perspective, it's still required because it has to know, well, how do I display this information inside of the portal, right? And that's what you have here, where now you can see, oh, these are test, but I can easily put the folder name to be Jasmine or Jared so that you can still find the records that are tied to Jared and Jasmine.
Yeah, I could see if there was names or other information that's pertinent. Yeah, it'd be, yeah, that'd make more sense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's typically what we do here. So let's say I create another example and I'm going to use, let's say, I'll say, I'm going to call, I'll use Will Clemens, right? Will Clemens at mail.co, right? And I'm just going to, but I'm, instead of naming it test, I'm actually going to name it his email, right? This could be any text field. But what you'll see here is now this is a lot more beneficial because now I know that if I go here, okay, cool, this is Will Clemens' record because it has his name on there, right? And and there's no need to like search or find or do anything else. It's like boom, I could see it. It's right there for it. So that's what it's used for. And the parent folder ID is just the location or the folder to store it in because it's not just a database table. It also lives in decisions, and that's why it's there. So that
Okay.
answers the first two questions. Go
Well,
ahead.
well, yeah. On number two, yeah, the parent folder wasn't required.
Oh, is it not
Uh,
just throw it in like the root folder of the project?
I suppose because
Okay.
my question on that was it kind of goes into the third question is
Hmm.
that when I put folders inside of a project and that those folders have data in it, when I would send it to the repo and then eventually to prod, that data would stay with it. But
Correct.
that but the data in that is from those
Test
fold like
data.
yeah, it's test data, so I don't want it to go with it. So
Hmm.
would I want it to not put a parent folder so it puts it in the base table so it doesn't follow along with the repo?
No, no. So the problem I could help you with that one. I'll answer it two ways. The first part is the parent folder ID. It's beneficial to put a value in there and create like some type of store data or data store and dump everything in there. The reason why is because when you get into the circumstances where you're exporting the test data into prod, and obviously you don't want to do that, you can easily go to a single location and find it all. Right now, in the situation you're in, you would have to query everything and then try to find where it's all at. So it makes the searching for it easier. To address the records being sent to repo, the reason why these records are sent to repo is because these are any elements that live inside of the system. So I don't think I'm attached to a repo, but what you can do is there is a property. I have to look this up, but I think there's a property that says, hey, these things are exported, or you could say, hey, anything that's of the employment case, don't import. And then in that menu, you'd have to search for it. Okay, let me see if I can do. I'm going to do this in a version 8. What version are you running?
Like 9:15. Let me check.
Okay, I'm going to show you this in version 8. It's going to be a similar process because I just want to show you like the menu that appears when
Okay.
you have that stuff and what you'd have to do with it. Or actually, I might be able to show it in this. I think I have. Do I have records? Let me see if I have records in this flow. Do I have data?
Yeah,
I
nine
do have data.
fifteen.
Okay, perfect. So let's say I export this. I'm not attached to a decisions environment or a decisions repository. But if I export this, what should happen? It doesn't show it. Darn it. what I was hoping is that it would show you a menu of all of the like these are documents, right? These are things that live in the system. And these are test data as well, and you don't want to send this to prod. What you would do is you can set the capability of those things to not be like to not transfer to um, this the repository server. Specifically, there is a property inside of folders. Let me go ahead and run this real quick. Query select from entity underscore folder. And I think there is a is exportable. Show and tree can be root. Let's see, folder. There is, come on, I know it's here. There we go, boom, is exportable. So what this means is that this property here, if this is set to true, it's going to carry over all those items. So like all your case folders that are test data, you want to make sure that you go in and set those as not exportable so that when you send it to the repo, it won't send in that data. And then when you deploy it to prod, it won't deploy your dev data. But that's the mechanism why it does that, because it presumes, oh, these are folders. You most likely want them exportable. And so you would have to go ahead and update and say, okay, we got to change the settings on it. I believe in the case entity, we can change this.
Yeah, because I'd want, of course, I'd want the folder to go along with it because that's where it's going to store all the cases and the and prod and test. But yeah, all the data within inside is only within those environments. So yeah, I did.
Well, yeah, but this is the tricky part. The case entities are folders. That's the problem. So that's why you'd have to know, like, hey, these are the whatever the count of the number of case entities there are. Let me set those folders that the case entity is, right? So this, like, if I export this, right? I want to export this project. Most likely, I'm gonna get the case entity records. We can open this. I can show this in a folder. We can dive into it, right? I'm gonna see, let's see, 3 folders, right? And I think those are the uh, case folders for the project. Yeah, I think that looks like it's the case entity, right? And so we'd have to make sure that I set that as not exportable for it because it will carry over those things. So if I go to my case entity, I think there's a way, edit structure, and the process here where you could say add it, show comment, change state action. Okay, maybe it isn't. Okay. So I'm not seeing that there's a place to trigger it. And let me see. I don't know if that data came over with it. So I should be, if I go into my zip file, let me open that one more time. We should be able to see those records, which I don't think I see those records. I think I just see the case entity, stored data. Okay, cool. So actually this one didn't carry over the data for it. So that's good. So it looks like by default, it won't carry it over, but the main problem, just to kind of summarize it and make it clear, is it's just that is exportable property from entity underscore folder that's being set for those things, right? And let's do like a where is folder underscore exportable. We'll say just false, right? And then we'll go ahead and run this. Oh, really? Do I have to do this? All right, cool, perfect. So these, and I'm going to set this up. I just want to see the names of these folders so you can see what they are. Data structures. So for example, a lot of the history folders, they're actually folders for things. Um, those automatically are set to false and they don't get carried over. So that's the result. That's how you resolve that issue for yourself is find all those pieces of data that are case entities, and then you just have to update them. You can do it with a flow and just fetch all of those folders that have that case name and do it with a flow and just update that property in it. And then when you export, you won't carry the data over. or push to repo.
Yeah.
Any did that make sense? Any questions over that?
No, yeah, all that makes sense. Yeah, yeah, I think the last one I was trying to assign cases. Created a case entity, then I was trying to assign that case to a
Hmm.
person, but then I got to the point of I was using and maybe I'm just doing it wrong, using the create task, um, or
Hmm.
add task,
Yeah.
but then it needed a form, but I don't like we're assigning it on the back end, so we don't need any form to even show or see anybody. We're assigning them automatically to people.
Mm. You're assigning it automatically to people.
Yeah, so we know this is this certain type of task. It
Hmm.
goes to these maybe group of 5 people, or maybe sometimes this individual person. I because that no one else decides besides the workflow that's happening.
Gotcha. Do you know, and I don't know, I don't know your project very well, but is there a property in your case entity that says like assigned to, or there's something that's managing that to like that like controls who gets what? Do you
Yeah,
know the logic or okay?
well, yeah, because long ago,
Yeah.
long ago, I created assignments and process folders and all that stuff, and then they changed their mind and wanted something more simpler. So
Hmm.
I created flows that went and APIs and pulled all the table data and found out in our ERP system who it should be assigned to based on all
Hmm.
our data in our ERP system. So I know for
Gotcha.
certain that this task should be assigned to this person within the flow data. So I just
Gotcha.
need an assignment that says, okay, yep, assign this task to that person.
Okay. Gotcha. And so so you're saying there is a field on that data structure on the case entity that does that?
Well, isn't that what assignments is? Is it's assigning it to a person?
Yeah, or are you using the assignments? Oh, you're using like the decisions assignments? Is that what you're using?
Well, I prefer just to use cases, but I didn't see where I could assign a case without using assignments.
Right. No, correct. So like if you can use assignments and decisions, but you would have to actually use like a create case, like a create assignment or add task step, and then you can give it an assignment that's either a decisions form or it could be like just a waiting on an external system until some action happens, and then that assignment is completed. But that would be how that would work. So like to kind of
So,
show.
so to assign a case, you have to use the assignment uh, function. There's not, you can't just, that, this person needs this task and somehow assign a case to a person without assignment.
So like there's no like the only built in like out of the box feature we have is utilizing the add task step, either a decisions form or some type of external system. Um, like add task, like let me show you what I mean of the out of the box parts. So we have add task, and then we have add task in external form. I'm sorry, not external form. There's a wait on external system. Right. This goes into like the architecture. So since I don't know your process, this may be a little off. But like one of these two ways, this gives a user a decisions form that you can then tie to the case entity. That will then like, hey, Jerry needs to fill out this form. Once he's done filling out the form, then boom, he can go on and do the next thing. Wait on external system step. You could say, hey, assign this action and wait till this thing happens. And then your flow will call that. Like if Jared clicks a checkbox on my dashboard, that means it's done. Then it will trigger this action to then go do the next thing it needs to. So those are the only two ways out of the box. Other ways that you can have some type of assigning process is, let's say everyone has their own folder, right? I have my own folder and Jasmine has her own folder. And what we do is, okay, let's say, so let me just do this here. So if I have a create folder, we'll do it from here. I'm just going to call this Jasmine, and then I'll call it Jared right here. Right. And so then what I can do is I can say, hey, since this test record is Jasmine's record, I'm going to make sure I move this and it gets put in the Jasmine folder. And then I can report over it and have a report over those types of folders. And I can display all the stuff that I want to assign to Jasmine. And from the back end and decisions, I'm just storing things in that folder. And then I have a report that reports over the contents of that folder. That'd be a way you can like do a soft assigning if you don't want to use the out of the box features. But the only out of the box features are really like the wait on external system step and then the add task step for it.
It's like how it would work on ours would be that there's some record edit in the ERP system.
Mhm.
Decisions would see that, say, okay, well, let me go pull some table information from the ERP system, see it should be assigned to. Okay, I'll
Mhm.
create a case and I'm going to assign that case to the person that I just found.
Mhm.
But there's
Gotcha.
no, yeah, we don't need a form or anything for anybody to see it because it's automatically going to be assigned.
That so then what I would suggest is then the step you'd probably be utilizing because that sounds like this is exactly what the wait on external step step is for. You don't have to create an assignment, or you don't. I'm sorry, you don't have to create a form that someone needs to fill out, but it gives you an integration detail where you can say, hey, based on this thing that happened, and whoever did whatever data they need to, then go ahead and proceed to the next part of the flow. And it's not a form that someone needs to necessarily fill out. So that would be how I would. That's what I would recommend for the next step.
Okay, but I'd still have to have it weighed on some system thing because I'm not really waiting on anything. I already know who to assign it to.
No, no, no. Yeah, yeah. So so it's so like this. So this part. So right for the assign it right here, you can add Jared, right? And so basically, I have that information. You send that, and then whatever happens, whatever's going to trigger the step, then you have that part then called this step again and say, okay, now go to my ERP system, do the change, or update the change or something like that.
Okay.
If you want, I feel like I'm not talking very accurately because I don't know your use case. If you want, we could get on another one-on-one call and you can share your screen and show me what you're trying to do
Okay.
if you'd like.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, cool. Awesome, awesome. All right, cool. I'm gonna go ahead and answer that one live. All right, next one, Joe. I changed the control from a drop-down box to a multi-select checkbox. I'm using an insert query to write the external to write to the external SQL database. When I reference the control, I am getting the red X on any level after my main control. I'm gonna give you permission to talk, Joe. Let's see, change the control from a drop down to a multi-select. And you get a
So
red
yeah,
X.
this was working fine for
Mhm.
a drop down. And
Okay.
then they asked me to say, well, we wanted to have multiple choices. So that's a multi checkbox. Um,
Yes.
so I stick the multi checkbox up there on the form,
Mhm.
and I have an insert query that when it runs, it looks at the value prior to making it a checkbox. I looked at the value of the drop down,
Mhm.
and I was able to reference the selected value, if you will, and then write that into the query as an input, and then the query would
Got it.
and it would write it to the database. Now that I
Understood.
changed it to a, multi-select checkbox, I get same thing, selected item. I'm not
Sure.
getting anything that would reference like a list because I know that the multi-select checkbox is output as a list, correct?
That is correct. Let me create a quick form just to make sure that I'm on the same page. But yes, that's correct. So if I do this form, we'll say test form, and then I'll say drop down list. So we started off here. So I'll say, I'm assuming, was it a string or a composite type
Yeah,
you're
it was a
passing?
string.
Okay, cool. Perfect. That makes it a lot easier. All right. So let's say, and I'll do static and I'll just say A, B,
B,
C,
C,
D.
and D. Right.
Exactly, whatever. All right, cool. We got that data, and then I'm going to do this. All right, cool. So this is the initial part of the process. We got it, right? And then let's say I'm just going to do a create data step afterwards, and that's going to be my quote unquote insert step. Um, let's see. I'll say mock insert query step.
Right.
And then I'm assuming you're passing. It's just a single value, or is it a list of values it's expecting?
If you use the multiple checkbox, it's going to be a list, right?
Right. Yeah. 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 Well, yeah. Correct. I was wondering if you're because you're using the insert query, right? This one.
Yeah. Well, I made
Uh,
my own insert query, but yeah,
oh, so you use like a raw SQL step.
Not a raw SQL, but it was a query that I made as a query integration.
Got it.
And then
Okay.
I dragged the query integration into the flow. And then obviously it needs an input, which I'm referencing from the form.
Got it. Okay, I'm with you. I see. So that's the input, and it takes in a list, or it only takes in a single value.
Um, it takes in I changed it all to list. I changed
Okay.
them all to a list. I mean, doesn't the multiple checkbox output as a list? That's what it says in the instructions.
Right, correct. I'm talking about the step itself. So on your insert query step, does it allow for a single string, right? Like string
That's the
input?
problem that I'm having. When I run my
Hmm.
existing query that worked with the dropdown, I get no errors. The moment I choose the is list function in that
Hmm.
query, it says object not set to an instance of something like that. So
Okay, gotcha. That's where I was going to. I see it. So I see what your problem is. So you're trying to say, hey, so you rewrote your query to say is list, and then now you could take in a list of variables.
yeah, but I can't save the query because it keeps erroring out.
I gotcha. So I see. Um, I'm wondering. I have to lead on someone maybe who's know a little bit more of SQL than I do, because I think the problem is simple situation, but I don't think this is I don't know how my concern is performance on this. Is you can say, okay, I'm actually going to keep the query to be a single sort what is it, single write item,
Hmm.
and then you can loop through it, and so that would be a worker. That's what I
But I
might
also
consider
have to
worker.
read from
Okay.
the database too. So whatever way it stores it in the database, does it store it like as a list in the database? Is it like when you look at it at the actual SQL level, do you see like A and then a carriage return B, a C and D if you selected A, or does it put a comma between them? I don't know how it, because I haven't gotten it to write to the database yet, so I don't know how it stores it. But keeping that
Hmm.
in mind, when it finally does store it,
Sure.
eventually you have to bring it back. So
Correct.
the four checkboxes that I have has to, if you have A and C, the first one and the third one would have to be checked.
Correct. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, how it stores it is it stores it like it's a new record. So let's take, for example, just so we can use some mock-up. So let's say I have first name, right? I know these aren't your data, but first name and last name, right? And let's say we have Joe and Will, or Joe Williams, right? Over here. And that's what we already have in the database. Now I'm presuming, let's say I run this form and I click the checkbox Jasmine and Jared, right? Then if I loop through it, it's going to say, oh, that's a list of strings. I'm going to loop through it, or a list of composite types. And then I'll write a new row in the database, Jared, R, and then, Jasmine M, right?
So does it have to be a one to many? Like this one particular field has to have a many table to accommodate many checkboxes?
So it doesn't. I'm not sure what your data model is, but it doesn't have to. It's just by default, it's just going to write it as it's a new row if you loop through it.
Well, prior to it being a multi-checkbox, it was
Hmm.
all written to one row.
I see.
Now,
Okay, I
now that
got you.
it's a multi-checkbox, I would have thought that, A, B, C, and D would have come out where just A would have come out if it was a drop down.
I see. Which okay. So I think I'm understanding. So let's say this is your data set. I'll say just columns data set, and then data set two, right? Or this is just the columns. So when it was a single dropdown, you stored A, then you stored B, then you stored C. And
Right.
then now what you're wanting is like, hey, I want in the new data set, if I select A, B, C, I have to have like A, you know, some way to distinguish between A, B, and C as individual properties, whether it's
Correct.
a gotcha. Okay. I think I understand the problem. There's a couple ways you can do with this. Um, is one way what you can do is you can create your own type of like character joining by just utilizing the join string step. And so if you do want to store all of those things in a single like cell like that, all you would need to do is you can add a join string step right here. And then you can take in the list that comes from the multi. I don't think I put the multi drop down, did I? Yeah, I didn't do that. So you can take the list from the radio button list. That's what you used, right?
I used
Checkbox.
yeah, just type in
Got it. Checkbox list.
checkbox list. Yeah, there you
Perfect.
go.
Roger that. All right, cool. So we'll
And
do
static. It was static.
string. I'll say this is string.
It was static list items.
Yeah,
That's what
I
I'm
gotcha.
doing. A, B, C, and D.
Yep. A, B. Oh yeah. A, B, C, and D, right?
Right,
And then I'll say this is my string output list. Perfect. Right.
right.
And so now what you can do is, let's say anytime we get some data that comes in, I'm just going to connect this to the end. I can say, okay, cool. I'm going to grab my source, which is going to be that list of information that I get from that. And then my separator, I could say, is a constant or a comma, right? And then when I debug this, I can say, hey, I want B and C, and sure, I have to put stuff there, B and D. So now it goes through, and you'll see that B and D is now separated that way. And then you could put that into your data, into your insert query, and it'll just write that with a comma.
And then the way back.
Then the way back, then you would have to know that if I query that side, I'd have to then split by that. So if I fetch that data, you can then use the opposite step split string, not splint, split string. And then I can take in that data, right? So I can show that here. Let me move this out of the way. Perfect there. And then now I can take the source, which is the single string, which would be my join strings. And then I just say, hey, my separator would be a comma. And then now if I debug this, and we'll go ahead and let's get all three of them. Now what you'll see here is we showed this before. We put things together. Then imagine, like, in between this done step, I fetch the data again. Then I'm just going to say, hey, I want to split these into commas. And then now they're each individual items again in a list.
And that will change the multi checkbox to select just A, B, and C.
That will change the multi-select box set A,
In
B,
other
and
words,
C.
when
Okay.
it reads it from the database, somewhere down the line, A, B, and C should be checked, but D shouldn't.
So that
I'm reading
information,
from I'm reading
yeah,
from the database. I
right,
know
right.
I got A, B, and C. Now I got to set the control to
Mhm.
show A, B, and C, but not D, because D's not in the list.
Okay, so if I want to pass this to another, like, form or whatever.
No, just want to pass it to the control that's on the form.
Yeah. So yeah, you could definitely do that. That's how, then I would do that. Then I guess this would be an active form flow where you would do that. Hey, let me get that data and then split it by whatever the list needs to be split by, and then
Right.
do
I
it
do
that way.
have an active form flow that currently sets when you change the grid, it
Mhm.
changes all the fields according to whatever's on the grid. And the
Perfect. Okay.
one field that I have trouble with is obviously this one. But join strings and split strings seems like to
Mm,
be
correct.
the way I gotta go.
Exactly. So if someone does select this and then you just pass that back to the form or send it to whatever data source you want, then it would just show those selections.
So by default, it doesn't when you reference so how did you reference the to write to the database? How did you reference or what level did you go to references it? Because you can start at the very top, which is the
Mhm.
multi-select checkbox. And
Sure.
then one below that is what? Can we just go back to that real quick?
Yeah. So one's the form. Oops, that's not what I wanted. So one's the form, and then I just have immediately after, if I want to concatenate those things and store it in the database, then I would
Hmm.
join those strings together. So that's me just putting it in the database.
Okay, and you're referencing the join string. The source is the string
Yeah.
output list, which is what the
Yes.
output of the form.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, in my mini example, I'm just referencing the data that comes out of the form. And so the join string concatenates it into a comma separated list or comma separated long string. And then the split strings just takes the output from the join strings and then puts a comma as the separator so it
Yep, I
knows to split.
understand all that. Do me a favor,
Okay.
just click on the form, test form.
Yep, of course.
The output of that is called,
String output list. That's the
and the
checkbox
join
item.
strings, click that,
Mm-hmm.
string output list. Good. So the one out is the in of the other,
Mm-hmm. You
separated
got it.
by a comma, and then you're going to write it to the database and then bring it back split string. Okay, I'll give
Mm-hmm.
that a shot, see if that
Yeah,
works.
exactly. Yeah. So that may work. The only thing I think is something to be aware of is that does break like I don't know if you guys are focused on like normalization of data, right? Because I know that's not really uh, a normalization technique of having multiple values in one cell, but that would be something that I guess your org
Yeah,
would have
no,
to
no, I
review.
follow you where you're going with
Okay.
that.
Okay.
Each one is an individual case, so
Hmm.
it makes no sense to make a separate table to do that.
Sure.
Um, but I understand the normalization process as well.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Yeah, because that's how we would handle that in this type of since that's our data. Um, yeah. The other thing I would suggest, well, actually, no, that one we already talked about that. So yeah. Any other questions regarding this?
Nope, I think that's
Awesome.
it.
Awesome. Cool. Cool. All righty. Appreciate the questions. These were fun ones. Architecture ones like yours, Joe's, are some of my favorites because I like thinking about the data. What do I have? What do I need? What do I have to get? So
Hmm.
those are fun ones. So, alrighty. Let's see. I think I might have answered that one live. Is there one more? Thought I saw one more.
I have one more if you have it.
Yeah, let's do it.
How do you know, or how do you design a form? I guess you have to figure like what's the smallest screen that it'll be shown on. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
people sometimes have 13-inch laptops, 17-inch laptops, 26-inch monitors, 56-inch monitors, right?
Mm-hmm.
So is there any kind of rule of thumb where you go, um, I guess we try to make the forms as small as possible, right? But
Mm-hmm.
how do we know we're too big? In other words, how do I know if, I mean, it's also the way the guy has it zoomed, right, on his browser. So I was like zooming in at
Mm-hmm.
100% and then
Yeah.
designing it on a 23-inch monitor to fit.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I do that and some guy has a 13-inch laptop, he's not going to get the same experience as me.
Sure.
So, what is there a rule of thumb to kind of design or the size of these forms?
Mhm. No, it's a really good question. I don't think there's a rule of thumb, but what we've done, let me show you. Have you seen this new video called Flex Layout
Yes, that with the stars and all that.
with the stars? Maybe? I think you might be right.
No,
This one, all about Flex Layout.
I think I saw that somewhere down the line.
Okay, because I'll put this in for everyone else in case they're curious about it. But since there's no really good rule of thumb from a decisions perspective on how to handle different sizes, in I want to say 9.14 or some version of 9, we introduced this thing called Flex Layout. And what it does is it will like resize that form. Let's see, let me go to the demo site of it so you can see what it looks like. So if someone moves it in a different way, you'll get to see that, okay, this thing magically pushes and moves things around depending on the size of someone's uh, screen or someone's, stuff. Let's see. Oh, cool. So as you can see the checkbox right here, if that is checked, it will then move those controls out of the way. I think it's going to happen in about 3 seconds. And so it moves all those controls. And so the same thing would happen on if you have a larger screen or a smaller screen. Is that
Hmm.
with flex layout, it would then move the controls around in a logical manner that makes sense to put them in. Um, and so that would be how we would do it. So we wouldn't really have like a best practice, except like if you can use flex layout, always use flex layout because then you can be able to accommodate other styles
Would
easier.
that work if you somehow went to the mobile app?
I would have to check. I believe so. I think this is mobile compatible. I'll have to talk with some of the UI team on that.
Okay.
So, but I'll take that offline and I'll send you an email.
Okay. All right. Well, let me get started. Join
Awesome.
string, split string.
Sounds good. Awesome.
All right. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. All right, guys. With that being said, at 12:50 or 12:49, I think we'll go ahead and wrap it up, and we'll get this recording uploaded so you guys can watch it for your own reference. Thank you so much for attending. Next or tomorrow will be Jeremy Litwinowitz. He'll be the one hosting the Lunch and Learn for tomorrow, and then Gregory will finish it up on October 2nd. So Wade, thanks for your email. I got it. I'm gonna shoot you an email of the time where we can meet. I think we will have time today, so I'll shoot you a time and let me know if that works for you. Um, and with that being said, thank you so much for your attendance, and I'll see you guys next time.